Good morning. This is Michelle Love, and you are listening to KPCALP in Petaluma, a free range radio and TV station. This show is called Dynamic Change, and what I do on this show is I talk about psychological patterns and emotional patterns. So I am a certified wellness coach. I am a certified self-defense instructor. I have a degree in psychology, and also I've been a fitness trainer forever as well. So I've worked with people in many ways, and I used to work in mental health. So if you need more information on me, you can always go to my website, which is Dynamic Change and Wellness. So I appreciate you being here today. And what I'm going to start talking about, kind of a whole genre I'm going to be moving into, is kind of boundaries and how we relate in romantic, intimate relationships. So we can find some emotional satisfaction, connection, feel safe, and kind of look at how we relate on those levels. So today we're going to start talking about what makes you feel safe within a relationship, a romantic relationship. And I'm all inclusive, so I'm not going to talk about genders. I'm going to talk about personality types, because I really support all the people out there and appreciate all of our differences. And I want to speak to just the complexity of relating and vulnerability and intimacy issues, so we can have deeper connections and healthier connections. So within society, I feel like the portrayal of the genders, just to kind of get that out of the way, is, the females are really over-sexualized. So we have that. And then I think the males are really looked at to always be strong and not expose vulnerability much. So we have some really, I think, very unhealthy ways of portraying people. And so I would like to kind of put that aside, and as we talk about this, and I'm just going to let the gender thing go, but I want to look at some of those patterns. I want to look at some of those betrayals of how we are presented and what is validated within our society, because I think it really affects our ability to relate and be authentic and feel acceptable and lovable even when we are feeling vulnerable. And so I want to strengthen the parts of ourselves that need to be seen, as opposed to being over-sexualized, or, the way that type of connection in our society, I think, has developed is it became pretty kind of blingy, that there you had to be this rock star in that department to be really attractive. And to me, that just, there's no depth there. There's no quality of the self there. There's no feeling safe. And that void, in my opinion, that emptiness that has crept into that type of intimacy in our life, really, there's just no development of sharing that parts of ourself that lead to true intimacy, that lead to satisfying sexual intimacy. So all of those lack of connection, where the trust is lost, the feeling safe to truly expose yourself on a deep level, to have that result of a satisfying connection, gets lost in all this. And I strongly disagree with it. I think that it's so important to feel safe, to keep looking at what allows us to feel safe when we connect with people on an intimate, very deep level, and be able to ask for what we need. So those are the kind of qualities I want to talk about. And I will continue to do it throughout the upcoming segment of my shows, where I'm going to talk about how we can heal this disconnect and heal kind of some of these concepts in society that I think are just so harmful for everyone, but particularly the kids. Why should the kids grow up with that kind of baggage? Gross. I'm sorry. Some of these things we need to find a better way. We really need to, because it's just hurtful and it supports abuse patterns, and so that's what I'm going to be speaking to, and I'm excited to do so. So thank you for listening. So first, I would like to start out with really acknowledging, as a person, how do you want to relate with somebody? And when I talk to people about this, I talk about, first, you really have to see yourself. And when we really look at ourselves, say, okay, I'm a person, I'm just going to give examples of personality types and kind of show a way to move forward with that. So let's say you're a person that's likes to communicate a lot, has a lot to say, wants to feel heard, and that for you, that's a really important way to share. So I recommend making a list and take note of who you are. So let's just, we have our list going, okay? And so if someone is a very vocal person, it's really important to them to have communication. Then you want to think about, okay, in a romantic relationship, it's really important for me to be with someone that also really likes to communicate. And it doesn't have to be a constant thing, but someone that is able to communicate in general, and also the quality of that communication. So looking at how you, what are you trying to convey when you're communicating with someone that you want to be very close with, the kind of the texture of it. So the content of what you find interesting in life. So it doesn't mean we have to find someone exactly like us, but someone that has some similar interests. So the way they relate to important topics, life topics, intimacy topics, that there's a common thread. So there's a satisfaction within that communication. I think that's really important. So looking at the quality and the texture of what is really going to feed our soul, our heart, so we can really bond with somebody. There's got to be some sort of common thread and texture on how they relate. So looking at someone that is a strong communicator, and sometimes, let's say we have someone that communicates and they speak from the heart really well. So when they communicate, it's not superficial, it's deeper. So finding someone that can be deep, and those people are out there. I think we have lost the ability to be as authentic as we could within the society because of the dysfunction. But the people are there, but sometimes it has to be kind of coaxed out and pulled out of people. And so I'm looking at how can we bridge these gaps within ourselves and realize what we need in intimate relationships and find a way to relate. And also I want to speak to, I think it's really important to acknowledge that no matter how much we love somebody, we are not going to change them. So if you're in a relationship and as you're taking stock of what you really need and learning how to communicate what you really need and then working on that, that's fantastic. But if you come to a conclusion that you are in a situation where there's no way to really connect, and that is not something that looks feasible to heal, you also need to look at that too. So I don't think it's a healthy thing to stay in a relationship if there's no way to heal certain things, important things. And so I think we should fight for, yeah, let's heal it. That's great, but the other person wants, needs to want to work with you and have that dedication as well. So it can't be a one-sided thing. So a lot of what I'm going to be speaking to is learning how to communicate what you realize about yourself that you need to have a successful, strong connection with someone, and how to start working that out with someone and asking for it. Because I think a lot of what gets lost in our intimate connections is that asking, realizing what we need to feel really open with somebody, because it's so powerful, and it's sexy to have, this strong, open connection. Then you can have deep intimacy. But how do we get there? And I mean authentic stuff. I don't mean this blingy stuff. I mean, this is stronger than the bling, in my opinion. But we have to cultivate this deeper connection that is going to allow for more satisfaction with intimacy, with physical intimacy, with emotional intimacy. So, and it also gives that kind of grounding structure for trust. So I speak a lot about safety and because I think the emotional body, when we do not feel safe, and I think sexuality is a huge place people do where we don't promote a safe container within our society at all. I think we give it a very dysfunctional container. And for me, I even decided, and I know I have a very different kind of path that is very not mainstream, but I decided not too long ago that I didn't want to watch shows that had violence towards women, which is so common. I didn't want to watch or read books that, because I would like sometimes I would read the psychological thrillers at times, but often it's all about, the stalker or this happens, this violence, or just violence in general. So I've actually really been pulling away from that and decided it's not there's that stimulus within our society of equating kind of passion. I think they kind of mix up the emotional quality of passion with violence, like that ultimate stimulation, sexuality, violence, like they're woven together, and I think that is something we could let go of. To be honest with you, I think having satisfying passion between us comes from a place where you can feel safe to fully open. And so if the whole point of all this stuff is to have a satisfying connection, then maybe we should really look at how we're presenting it within our society. So those are the kind of topics I want to be talking about. So again, my name is Michelle Love, and you're listening to the Dynamic Change, and I'm talking about creating safe boundaries for intimacy in romantic relationships, and handling how we approach intimacy in general in that way in our lives. So again, if we're making a list of what do I need, who am I? Okay, so we've already said a person that communicates a lot would benefit from being with someone that also enjoys communication and also the same texture of communication. So someone that maybe they're very spiritual, so they talk about those topics. It doesn't mean you have to agree 100%, but there is some healthy stimulation within your communication that feels satisfying. Because when you have someone really intelligent, so the person, I'm just creating an imaginary person and how this could play out. So a really a very mental, intelligent person that likes to express will need to have an outlet for that expression. So a partner that can also doesn't need to communicate all the time, but is able to match that quality of communication and interest in certain topics in life, and has some common, doesn't have to be the same, but some common ways of kind of looking at the really important things, so you can have this really interesting, stimulating dialogue. That's sexy. We're working towards that, right? We're working towards what is really going to make someone feel engaged. We want to feel engaged with the person we're with. Okay, so communication can be a huge category. Another thing is allowing vulnerability to be within the relationship. So I think that a really important thing for everyone is they want to feel heard. And how do we ask for people to hear us that we're really in a relationship with? So if we give, people often don't know how to give us what we need. So learning how to say what you need, I think, is the key. Feeling safe enough, feeling lovable enough to say, this is what I would like to happen within our relationship, so I feel like I can really share and be vulnerable. So I've given this example before, maybe letting them know I have something I just need to share, and you don't have to solve it. You don't have to do anything with it. I just need to feel heard, because I'm struggling with this particular issue that I'm healing or experience. So kind of set the groundwork of, and sometimes, like, if we're really caught up in our emotion, we can't vocalize it. Maybe text it, maybe email it, write it, have a journal at home that you both talk to each other through the journal. Like, for those moments where it's so vulnerable to vocalize it, that you might need to give it a safe container to begin with, and just say, I'm feeling really vulnerable about something, and so I need you to just hold me and let me cry, or just hold my hand and let me talk about it, and just listen. I don't need any input. I don't need you to fix it. Like, sometimes we just need to feel heard, but in a very intimate way, in a very safe way. So creating that safe container for that, right? So asking for, I just need to be held, letting them off the hook. Don't worry about, you don't need to solve this for me. This is something I feel I can resolve, but I just need to let go of the emotional pressure with it. Or you can even say, can you just let me express this, and, tell them how to do it. Look in my eyes, hold my hand, or maybe just like hug me a bunch before and after, or just hold me, let me cry, or go for a walk with me and let me just expel this out. Sometimes we have to access it through the physical body, right? So going for a walk can help move the emotional body through the body somatically and help it release, right? Or let me go to the beach, because the nature can help us relax. It can help us feel quiet within ourselves, so we can let this stuff come up to the surface. So asking this person to be part of creating a safe container. So you can use nature, you can use physical intimacy, but really give it some boundaries. I don't want to have sex. I don't want it to lead to that. I need this to be an emotional sharing of the heart and vulnerability. So give it some rules. And then maybe you do want feedback from them, but say, can you give me your feedback tomorrow? I need to just kind of break down. I need to open myself up to this, and I want you to just be my witness and be my person. right? So thinking about how do we create safe containers, or, telling them, I'm just feeling a little disconnected from you. I just need to communicate. And what I love is when we go out, maybe, we go out on our date, out to dinner, and just talk. I feel so connected to you if we can just share, and it almost feels like a special occasion. We went out and we honored that time between us. So thinking about that, creating a scene for the connection, for the sharing. And the more we're able to feel this deep connection of the heart, of this vulnerability, it's going to lead to more satisfying intimacy, which I think everyone wants. But there has to be all the layers. There has to be emotional intimacy. There has to be physical intimacy. In my opinion, there has to be mind intimacy. So communication, even if you're not a huge communicator, some people are more introverted, doing things that stimulate the mind together. So whether it is, like, let's say both partners are very introverted, maybe they watch documentaries together and really absorb because they like to learn. So they learn this information. And then maybe they just talk about that later. And to them, that's intimacy because there is a mind connection, right? So we have a way to relate in the mind. It doesn't have to be just communicating your own thoughts. It could be absorbing some interesting, or going and looking at art together and then communicating about that, or listening to some music. But some way to share our mind. So we can think of different ways to share the mind, and then share communication, and then share our heart. And then sometimes, especially if we had a lot of trauma, we don't know how to share our heart. We're like, oh man, my heart's chewed up. So how do we do that, right? Because we got to find a way to do it. I think we should all work on healing. I think that indirectly heals society, and we want to feel better. So you could also tell your partner, I just need I want to just either hold hands and just breathe together. Nothing needs to be said. Nothing needs to be done. No intimacy, no nothing. Just breathe with me. And just allow me to be present with what's going on with me, and you be present with me working on being present, right? Or you could put your hands on each other's hearts and just breathe and see what comes up. And you don't have to talk about it, but later say, wow, okay, I didn't realize I had that going on. But creating that kind of safe, intimate, powerful, I'm here for you container allows things to come up. And then we can figure out, what do I need? What do I need to ask for? What is going on with me? Because there's so much trauma around intimacy. Because I think our society has been so dysfunctional forever in this department. Forever. And I think it's total crap. We need to find a way for us to relate and to really share, so there can be this healing and this depth of intimacy. We can model this for the kids. And enough with the social media, enough with the selfies, enough with the shows that, too much about how the body looks, how it's presented, and not enough about the emotional quality. It gets very lost, and that's really a shame, like, why lose that part of ourselves when the whole point of intimacy is having a satisfying connection. And to have a really satisfying connection that I believe will heal issues in society, you cannot just skip over all the emotional qualities. So passion, true, strong, sensual, outrageous passion comes from a connection. So the more we develop this depth, this texture within our lives, I think it will heal our relationships, and the future generations of relationships and the just society, the more we can really come from a different place with this. So we've looked at how we can open our hearts. And so again, not to speak from a gender point of view, let's think of sometimes I'll talk about the feminine and the masculine, because I think we all have that within ourselves. I think it's less about gender. I think we all have those qualities, and that's great. And I think that's fantastic. But I think another way I can express that is, let's say, a very strong personality that feels like they have to always be in charge, that they let everyone down, or they look weak if they show their vulnerability. It's a huge pressure to always feel like you have to be strong, in charge, figure everything out, like it all lands on your shoulders. That is really stressful. That can give you stress in your body and in your mind, and all of us, no matter what kind of personality we have, how masculine, how feminine, whatever qualities we bring to the plate, we have to find balance within ourselves. So if you have a really strong personality, they're also going to need to look at, do I allow myself to ask for help? Do I allow myself to feel vulnerable? And so when we're writing down who we are and what we need, I think it's really important to start asking, like realizing, okay, I'm way out of whack in this way. I never ask for help. I never ask someone to hold me. And I think it's really important for powerful people to ask for that kind of support. And I think we all have the potential to be powerful. I think everyone's powerful within themselves, but we express ourselves very differently. Some of us are more sensitive. Some of us are very nurturing. Some of us are leaders. Some of us are, very in charge kind of people. And all of it is fantastic, but we have to find balance and find ways to regulate ourselves and look at how we are sharing ourselves with someone that we really want to bond with in a deep, intimate way. So making your list of, okay, so we've gone over people that are more introverted, how they could share their minds, so if you have someone more introverted and maybe they like a more peaceful expression, like subtle, maybe they're more of a subtle person. So for them, going for a hike is a really wonderful way to connect, working in the garden together, something that's quiet, but there's this sharing of time. So for them, their kind of energetic flow, their emotional expression, the way they think is more quiet, right? Because there's more quiet people. I'm a big communicator, but some people are more quiet. So for them, realizing, okay, I need a certain amount of quiet time. And it helps me to spend a certain amount of time by myself. And so you could ask for that in the relationship. Every day I need a half an hour to go work in the garden, to kind of unpack myself on an emotional and mental level, and it really grounds me to work with the earth. Or I need to go walk the dog. Now, if you have people that are needing more connection, and maybe there hasn't been enough connection, you can also say, but I would love some company, but understand I need the boundaries of I just need to be quiet. But I would love to feel like I could do this with you because we work all day. We don't even see each other much. You could say that. And so then finding ways to have that connection with your loved one that still honors what you need is another way you could do it if you have very little time. So saying maybe we just enjoy the presence of each other and we're really quiet for half an hour and we're both cool with that. Then after that, we can sit down, have a cup of tea and talk about our day. but maybe life is really stressful and you need that quiet time. It's more of an introverted person, need time to process. I feel like introverted people need that time to think and kind of absorb. The way they move through their emotions is more, I need quiet to kind of get to my feelings around. They work out their feelings in more of a quiet inward way. There's more thinking, there's more allowing for that feeling of the emotions. And so they need that kind of quiet. It's like an absorption. That's kind of how I feel being more introverted feels. There is like this inward feeling. So you have to create space, because if they're bombarded by stimulation from other people in their environment, they almost don't have the amount of space they need to, in an introverted way, process their emotions. So again, you're listening to Michelle Love with Dynamic Change, and I am talking about intimacy. I'm talking about romantic relationships and how to realize what you need, how to communicate what you need, and have safe boundaries so we can all have a deeper, more satisfying, intimate, passionate connection within our lives. So for someone more introverted, I think they need less stimulation and a little more space to really ground within themselves. Now, if you have someone really fiery, I'm very fiery. I'm a little both. But it really helps me to be physical. So, and communicating. So looking at the balance. So asking for what we need. If you have someone that is more vocal or a combination of extroverted and introverted, the physical exercise, I think, is a really good decompressor and mover of energy for the emotional body, the physical body. So if you have someone really kind of feisty, has a lot of energy, really intelligent, they're often kind of pressurized, right? Like maybe they have a really mental job that they do, or they're just such high-powered doers. Like, how do they unpack themselves so they can be accessible to their mate, right? So I think physical activity is really helpful for those people. So having a powerful expression of movement within the body. Maybe you guys go for a bike ride, to tell your mate, how would you feel about every day when we first see each other, I might give you a kiss and a big hug, and we go for a bike ride. And we go ride bikes together for like half an hour and come home, because a lot of times people do not know how to decompress. And I find a lot with people that are very intelligent and very mental actually are really stressed out, and their body is really stressed out because they don't know how to turn off their mind. Exercise will help release the endorphins, that oxygen, drinking water, all these things, they really will help. So if you can support each other in that and have an agreement, and again, you see if you need a safe container about it. Let's just go on a bike ride and just tell jokes the whole time. Okay, so I think humor is so healing. And I find finding a physicality and a way to just be joyful with each other is so huge. And looking at the type of person you are, if finding a way that fits who you are and the dynamics of who you are together, but thinking in those terms, like, okay, we go for a bike ride, and maybe we agree that if you're a very humorous person or a mischievous person, you need an outlet for that. If you can do that with your mate, man, that is fantastic. That is really, passionate to be able to play. Mischievousness is such an important part of having fun without substance. Substances, I think, are way overused in our society. And I think if we can find a way to be mischievous and have humor and express on those levels, it's almost like we allow ourselves to act out, right? So we don't have to drink alcohol. We don't have to do anything else to numb ourselves out. Like, I think we have to learn how to play. And I think that is a very, sexy thing to do with your mate. Be mischievous. So maybe you think of ways you can play with them. Maybe you have a game at home, that's really fun, that you can play together, that's just romantic and flirty and fun. Or you dress up for them when they come home from work. You go for your bike ride, and then you agree you're gonna maybe play your game for another half an hour once a week. Like little important things that allow us to express all parts of ourselves. And so, looking at what you need, I think, and I just love to give it that description. But being mischievous together, I think, is so fun. If you are one of those people with a great sense of humor and that just likes to be playful in that way, find a way to do it with your mate. If you guys can laugh together and, in a kind, wholehearted belly laugh kind of way, wow, how beautiful is that for your heart connection, right? And so looking at, okay, I need to have fun. I need to find a way to, like, being with someone witty is really a gift. So someone with a sense of humor that is witty, find ways to enjoy that with each other. So if you have that quality within your personality, finding an outlet for that, whether it's playing games together, or sometimes, there's this show that really cracks you both up. You can watch the show together, or a particular book, or a particular artist, or whatever it is. But look at that way of connecting. And so we've kind of looked at, things that open up the heart, open up communication. Now I want to look at vulnerability. So if we look at how do we express balancing out responsibility and power in the relationship. So looking at, if we have someone that's a very driven, I'm used to being in charge and taking care of everything, I honor those people. I totally understand all that. And I think it's really important we understand that it's a lot of pressure to always be in charge, and learning how to ask for help. So maybe realizing, wow, I'm tired all the time because I just give. That's not good. We need to have some reservoir of energy for ourselves. So maybe thinking, okay, what would help me? And thinking of, I could ask more help with the house. I could sit down with my whole family or with my mate and just say, I need help with these things. And I need to let it go and let you do it. Let you step up. And I'm asking you, out of all these things, how can we make this flow well? Right? So sometimes you sit down with the whole family. If you have kids, everybody, you all sit down and just say, these are the things I tend to do too much on. And I know that's me, like that's my pattern, but I want to balance that out. So who can pick up that particular task? Who can pick up that one? And find how the tasks work well for each person within the situation, I think is a really helpful way to do that. I did that when I was a manager. As a manager, I always looked at who I worked with and who was good at what and who enjoyed doing certain things. Because for them, maybe that's not a chore at all. Maybe that is so enjoyable for them and easy. And for you, it's like, oh, I hate doing that one. That just really, stresses me out. I feel tired. It's just like some people are, like to organize. Some people like to clean. Some people like to do physical things. So for them, doing the yard work or taking the trash out, they love that. And some people are like, oh, I'd rather dust and just do something quiet and kind of, for me, that's kind of zen and grounding. You never know. But talking to everyone and saying, I need some help with this. how can I share the responsibility with you and ask for help? Okay, so that's another way to look at power. I need help with the bills. I need help with, um, figuring out money, and so looking at how we disperse the responsibility and power within the relationship is very important. So each person has the ability to nourish themselves and not be putting out so much energy all the time. Every person should be able to fill their own cup. So some people like to do everything together, I've noticed in relationship, and some people are very independent. So if a really independent person needs to have a hobby separate from the relationship and say, once a week I have to go do this dance class for me or do this drum class for me. And then maybe they need that alone time. And then there are agreements of ways that the other person can also do their independent thing. And then there's things that you share. Say, oh, but we both, after all those things, we can go do this particular activity together. Like, find a way to weave it together, maybe in a different way, but see what you need to feel like you are satisfying your own needs. So when you come together in this relationship, you're not feeling so empty and trying to keep giving from this empty place. We have to take care of ourselves. So really looking at, okay, for me, I feel really balanced when I take that dance class. I feel really balanced when I take that exercise class. This helps me feel more balanced. And do I want to do that with my partner, or do I want to do a different activity later with my partner, or do I want to watch the kids so my partner can do that, and then they agree to watch the kids on this day so I can do that? Like, what's going to allow us to feel more whole within ourselves so we have more energy for that connection? So finding what feeds you and creating space for it within the relationship and asking for it. Really ask for it. And then, but make sure you're developing like a rounded, full, holistic, rounded bubble for your relationship. Like all the texture, all the different levels. So we have ways that we allow ourselves to be separate. I think that's important. Even with people that I found, they like to do every little thing together. It is important that you're still yourself and not just only identifying with your connection in a relationship, right? So just make sure you realize what you need to kind of build your own flame within yourself. And you do a little bit of that, whether it's meditation, whether it's exercise, whether it's a class you like to do, or just working in the garden or breathing, or, have that time so we are working on our own emotions and energy and being present with ourselves so our cup is as full as possible. And then how can I ask for this support for that from my mate? Because sometimes you have to, balance that out so there's time and availability to do that time for yourself. And then also the other person can do that for themselves. And then you have joint activities. So looking at how you're dispersing chores, responsibility, and developing a flow is really, really important. And then with intimacy, so going into what creates passion? What creates passion? So the more you work on filling your own cup, then we have energy for passion. Because I think that's a big problem. I think a lot of times we run, because life is so stressful in our society, it's way out of whack. So we're working way too much. Who ends up having the juice for passion? That's a drag, right? I work all day, I do all these things, and then you're all used up. And that's not our quality of life. That's what life should be about. Our quality of life, our quality of learning about ourselves, getting strong within ourselves, and then the quality of our connection with others that we really love, or just our friends, our romantic partners, all these things. Like, we want to have juice for ourselves and for that, and have this satisfying, enriching quality in our lives. Not just this stressful, I'm all used up, I'm tired, my body feels sick. Like that's not acceptable. We can't have that anymore. We need to have a society that cultivates being able to take care of yourself and really sharing and learning how to connect with others. And I think this heals society. So in looking at that, like what creates passion? I'm a dancer. I teach dance. I think music, dance, art, I think that gets the juices going. So doing something that, if you like to dance, I think that's amazing. If you like doing physical things together, you just have two people that are very, very physical, like kind of like athletes, I think that also is can be a way to create that kind of passionate connection. That can be, because it's fun. So I think to create passion, there has to be like creativity involved, fun, and playfulness, because that makes you feel sexy, right? So like if we are doing things that are fun, that kind of lead to playfulness, that lead to humor and feeling good in our bodies and feeling open, those kinds of things create passion. So you can, learning like what creates that kind of energy in your life. So again, my name is Michelle Love. You're listening to Dynamic Change, and you're listening to KPCA-LP in Petaluma. And I'm talking about creating safe, healthy boundaries for intimacy in relationship, with sexuality, and communicating and figuring out what you need to ask for in relationship and how to ask for that. So doing things that create passion. So passion, I think, has many layers. It's not just sexuality. It is sensuality, has texture. Sexuality, the way it's portrayed in society, I think can be often very empty. But sensuality is a whole nother thing. And there's nothing wrong with, sexuality having just that experience to it. But I just think that sensuality, having more texture and more qualities involved in it, leads to more meaningful, even if someone's like, we're not in a relationship, but we're really good friends and we want to be intimate together, there still should be this like regard for each other as humans, as people. Like I still really care about you. Like having some safe container, I think a lot of times people aren't even thinking about the safe container. I think they're just thinking about desperately looking for connection, and they feel like they have to sacrifice themselves and only do it in a sexual way, in this desperate reaching to fill the void within themselves. And I think that's a real shame, because I think it is kind of sacrificing the self. I feel that is a pretty common pattern when people haven't been able to find a satisfying relationship, that there is like this idea of, well, I can't get it all, and so I'm just going to have to be this blingy thing, relate in this blingy sexual way and try to be the race car, rather than finding something, even if it is just, we're just going to have an intimate relationship and it's not going to be a full committed relationship, but it will lack the qualities that make people feel emotionally safe. And there's so much trauma with intimacy. I mean, wow. There is so much trauma with sexuality that how is that a good thing? To have this lack of container for it. So I just think we need to look at the container, and that's what I will continue to talk about. And so a way to create safe container before I finish today is, so with sexuality, I think it's really important. I think it can really be a game changer if you can strive to be friends with someone first before being intimate. And I mean like intimate at all. No kissing, no nothing. Just be their friend. Really get to know them. And see if you jive on all these levels where a container could actually be built, even if you don't want a big relationship, but just something that feels healthy and safe, right? Emotionally safe. So there is always this growing, this healing within ourselves, so we have a more texture and depth to our intimate experiences in life. So a way to do that, I think be their friend first for as long as possible with no intimacy whatsoever. And then whatever you want to do with it, great, move forward. But really make sure you can be friends and that you can care about each other enough to be respectful and kind and, move it to the next level where it feels safe on an emotional level, and it doesn't feel like you're sacrificing yourself in trying to create a connection. So I think a really helpful tool, and I think this is a really good one for parents, is for teens and kids and people that are moving into sexuality. I think it's really important to just, because our society has made it so blingy, in my opinion, that right away you think about, this is what I'm comfortable with and this is what I'm not when it comes to the bedroom. And really figuring that out, and before you end up in a situation where you're already in that intimate situation and you have not set any boundaries, I think that leads to traumatic situations sometimes. It leads to just more situations that could happen that could have been prevented for both parties. So if you go into that, you can be friends, and being friends, if you can strive for talking about the intimacy before you go there. That's the idea of being friends. There's some trust, there's some strong connection as people where you can say, I'm really not okay with these things. Like, just don't go there. Don't touch me there. Like, I really don't, I'm not okay with that. Everything else, really good with. If you can just do that, then you can go into the intimacy without the fear that thing's going to come up. And then I'm going to have to say no. And then they're going to reject me. Or I'm not going to know how to say no. It's a big deal. We have to really find ways to respect our boundaries of what we feel okay with and what we don't, and start thinking in those ways and set up that container ahead of time. And then the intimacy is fantastic because you feel safe, you feel comfortable, you can be open, that boundary's there, it doesn't have to be expressed. And also it's going to be a really good indicator if that person was going to listen to you in the first place. And we need to talk about that. So I'm a certified self-defense instructor. I talk all about consent and intimacy and all these things. And I have, very strong, ideas around these things. And I think that we need to slow down a lot of the time and really check in with ourselves, realize what we need, and test out a situation a little bit before we move forward. So if we can be friends with someone, we can see if we really like this person enough to be intimate with them someday. Are they the person we thought they were? Are they a nice person? Are they a respectful person? What makes me feel respected? Do they listen to my feelings? Do they feel emotionally accessible to me? Do they feel like they care if I'm upset? These are important things, because if you move into the bedroom and this person, you're with someone that does not care, does not want to listen, and it is not there for you, then that's not going to be a good experience. It could be traumatic. It could be make you feel empty, sad. I mean, none of this is good. So we need to slow down and kind of look at what we're dealing with. And I'm talking about, this is a lot geared more towards dating, right? I've already talked about how to facilitate it within a relationship you're already in. But, I think slowing down is very wise. So if you slow down and you look at, okay, I've established having just a platonic friendship. And if I feel safe enough and lovable enough to not have to engage in sexuality with this person and try to just keep it up in my heart, the energy in my heart, and really get to know them and listen, it allows both parties to be more authentic and vulnerable, because the sexuality, I think, really taints how we interact, the expectations, feeling lovable, feeling good about ourselves. Do we feel validated? Like, if we can come from a friendship space for as long as possible, it heals a lot of stuff. And then you can have a conversation. This is what I feel comfortable with, and this is what I don't. And I need to make sure that's good for you. And maybe you talk about STDs and have you been tested. Maybe you talk about protection ahead of time. Maybe you talk about, these boundaries of what you like and what you don't. And then you can see, is that person listening to me? Do they seem to care? Are they able to have a mature conversation around this? Are they worthy of being intimate with me? And because if they're not open to listening to you about this kind of stuff, I think people jump into intimacy, sexuality, all the time with no container. The dating thing these days, I mean, that's not a healthy pattern. And there's nothing wrong with, sexuality and everything, but it should have a meaningful, respectful container of some sort. Doesn't mean it has to be a relationship. If something is more of more casual, there's nothing wrong with that either. But I'm saying we have to take care of ourselves and figure out what that means. What do we need to feel taken care of? This is really important, because this reflects how someone feels about themselves, how lovable they feel. Sexuality is part of the whole. It's not something you can cut out that's empty. That's not what it is. And even for people, just going off of hormones, oh, it's just hormones, there's no connection for me, it's just sex. Well, great, it's just sex for you, but is it just sex for the person you're with? Is that other person, feeling like they are sacrificing themselves to connect with that situation and ignoring their feelings, ignoring what they need for a safe container? So, what does that mean? And I find that people that at some point, if they just are like, for them it's just a sexual experience, later in life they may really want connection. And so I think having a balance of looking at what do we emotionally need, and not have it being the separate thing that is not really respecting what we need to take care of ourselves and to feel safe. I think there's a lot of not feeling safe within sexuality these days. The way it plays out, especially with dating, I think we could really do some work in this arena. So I appreciate you listening to me so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day. I'm going to read a commercial announcement for the radio. And so this show is called Indoor Windows. It's on Mondays from 1 to 2 p.m. It's hosted by Art Walker Jump in Uncle Artie's tie-dye time machine on Mondays at 1 o'clock and journey to the center of your mind. Indoor Windows delivers you an hour of small psychedelic, paisley prog, garage, buzz, and other music to help you plan your escape. Your host and guide, Art Walker, serves equal doses of cosmic classics alongside obscure gems. Tune in and vibrate to the music of the late 60s from the days when simply thinking could make it so. Thank you so much. Join me next week. This is Michelle. Have a good day. Bye-bye now.